Protected Passage is a program that we have jointly with Plan International designed for Central America and Mexico to protect people through the passage, right? We know that there are points in the passage that they will go through, and we are supporting local organizations in a way that they can continue supporting them in different ways by helping people understand the rights, by providing very basic things like hygiene kits. Particularly, I will also make emphasis here on girls and helping them with their hygiene during the process. We are providing shelters with some basic kits that they will need along the way, like families will need. And we are providing these shelters with food for the recipients when they are coming. We are providing them with educational materials so they can educate. We are helping them to recognize some things, for instance, the importance of having children in a separate space where they can run freely, the protection elements that need to be present for children. And in some instances, we are also helping with creating gardens where people can cultivate, and that will be a way of using your time, right, during that period of time when you are at the shelter. That's the whole purpose, is to protect that passage as they go through their whole journey. The basic elements that you will have is people who are at risk of violence in their communities and contexts, people who do not have economic opportunities to feed their families, allow children to go to schools. So it's a very difficult situation that they are fleeing. You know, an important thing I think to mention here is that people are not in pursuit of a dream, but rather they are escaping a nightmare. Families are coming mostly from 3 countries in the northern triangle of Central America. Is El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and then also through Mexico, right? So Mexican families are as well part of this population. So people are walking, many of them, through this area. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's hundreds of kilometers and under very difficult circumstances, including weather, including how people are being perceived by the population along the way, how authorities are treating them along the way as well. So there are many, many challenges. One is families that are fleeing violence from their communities. And it's not an issue just to move to a different location, because in general, these are areas where there is a low presence of police or low presence of government agencies, people living in poverty, and it's not that easy to move from one place to another, because most likely you will go to a similar place within the same country, right? So violence is number one. And when I'm talking about violence, it's not just threatening people or something like that, but actually killing people. So it's fleeing from that type of violence. The second one is not having economic opportunities. It's like you're trying to find means to get out of that context, right? But you cannot do it because you cannot make enough money to help your family get out of that place. And then the third one, the migration from these countries to the US has a long history between these countries. And you have families that are divided because of that. So parents probably they have migrated, kids are staying in their countries of origin because of the dangers and the challenges, but now they want to reunify the family. And that's another aspiration that these families have as well. It's an interruption of the ChildFund in different ways, right? Facets of this interruption. One is you lose your right and freedom to play, for instance, because What you have to do is to walk along the way with your parents or adults. We all have heard stories of children that have been kidnapped from a family that is migrating, children that are being used as a token to get money from them, and so on and so forth. The most terrible things that we can imagine. So that's one important aspect. The other one is the right to their education, because they cannot continue their education, and that's an important challenge. If we need to talk about the job of a kid, is to do those two things, right? Be happy, free, enjoy, learn by interacting with the world, but also learn by interacting with the formal education. And those two things are being taken out. If I may add, then also there is a negative impact in their overall health, because they are not following checkups with doctors, they are not having access to vaccines, they are not having periodic visits in a way that can help them grow healthy. So that's an important challenge as well. And lastly is the psychosocial impacts that a child will suffer. Imagine yourself every day thinking that you need to be vigilant because something might be out there to get you. It's a very long journey, and it depends on many factors. It seems like there are people who can afford a little bit more and probably will pay different means to get to the border sooner, right? But there are others that are just living with the things that they have in a bag. And in that case, it could take so many days. Why to support shelters? Why people are stopping in the different shelters that there are out there? Well, there are different reasons. One is to take a break, right? From that description that I was giving you earlier, children not being children but suffering, lack of education. But also adults are suffering because they need to really go under a lot of stress as they go through. So that's an opportunity to take a break. The other important aspect is it's an opportunity to get educated on, let's say, your rights. What are you entitled to as you go along the way? What are the dangers across the road that you will find and that you will be constantly be confronted with? What are the things that you could do in every case? So there are different reasons. Why are we supporting this? It's because we understand that these families need that information, need that break for a moment, just to give their kids the opportunity to, I don't know, watch TV for a day and let them be kids just for one day. There is an agreement between 4 countries, right? Among the 4 countries of El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and Honduras. And people can circulate across these 4 countries with no problem at all. So the moment is when they hit the border between Guatemala and Mexico. So that's where you need information about the things that I talked about earlier. But also some of them might decide to stay in Mexico, and they might apply to in the authorities in Mexico to seek refuge in the Mexico side. So there is a history of Mexico offering refuge to Central Americans. When there were conflicts in the countries, they will flee to Mexico seeking protection. And some of them came back later to their countries. Some stay in Mexico. So this is another time when Mexico is also supporting Central America. We are trying to find ways in providing support for a child to continue her or his education, right? That is an important aspect. But also how to help parents to understand the stressors that kids are going through and how to work with that and have the tools they need to support their children. We are also supporting the protection against COVID-19. On the one hand, we are providing hygiene basic elements. We are providing masks, face masks, but we are also orienting people in how to identify if someone has the potential to be infected and what to do. But very specifically about how to avoid that, which is very important when you're talking about people traveling together. We are not encouraging people. It's quite the opposite. If you see the different programs from ChildFund, we are working for people to find a ways to sustain their development in their communities. However, we are also aware that for different reasons, the ones that I mentioned, violence, economic opportunities, and so on, that there are families and children who are fleeing. And we felt compelled to offer also a response to those that have made the decision. In our programs that we have at the community level, we are informing particularly youngsters with families what are the risks involved when you made the decision to leave the community. Because sometimes you're fleeing from horrible conditions, but then you are going to go through similar conditions along the way. And we are helping people to be informed about those challenges and risks. How the countries and governments are responding, let me start by saying that there is an increased awareness by civil society organizations at these countries that there are important things that need to be changed. The gap between people who are well off and people who are suffering out of poverty is increasing over time. And there is an ongoing conversation on how we can close that gap. The other important aspect is that there is increased pressure also to reduce endemic problems in governments, such as corruption, and how that is being addressed. The response from governments, I think that the challenge that we are confronted with in these countries is that it's uneven. And it sometimes depends more on who is in power. The agreement to reduce the gaps that I'm talking about, reducing corruption, increasing opportunities, economic opportunities for people with jobs that are, let me say, dignified of people, that they can feel themselves that they are progressing as a result of their efforts. That is something that has not progressed as we all wanted over time. And if I could have a wish, it will be that these conditions could change. It's until these conditions of reducing violence, giving people economic opportunities, and reducing bad practices like corruption at the government level is when we will see a change in people fleeing outside of these countries. As long as we can support these efforts, not just the efforts along the way and the safe passage of people, but the development of people at the community level, we will be supporting. COVID has impacted in different ways. One is indeed talking to authorities here. It seems like COVID has reduced migration, but also it has impacted negatively in the way that it's being used as an excuse to really confront people. Even among the 4 countries that they have agreements that their people can circulate with no problem. And the argument that is being used is COVID. So it has affected both ways. One is in reducing, but the other one is in confronting with increased hardship migration because of protective measures taken by governments, shelters are closing the doors, right? They are receiving less, they are reducing the capacity. And the question is, where are people? And people are outside on the streets. They are under no protection. There is no information out for them. There is no shelter. But in addition, also, the risks have increased for these families because when they don't have information on what to do, even if when you are infected, there is no plan in what to do, which is what in general these shelters are offering as well as information for them. Right now, across many countries, there is an idea on how Central America can be supported to overcome this situation. I think international help is critical at this point in time. And the areas that I see is, one is supporting civil society that is working to move the agenda of development and sustained development within these countries. That is critical. The second one is supporting governments in overcoming endemic problems like corruption, that can be changed for their citizens. But then also finding solutions to reduce violence and to provide economic opportunities for their citizens. If we can address those important aspects, I think that we will see over time the reduction of migration, because in general, again, people are not happy to leave their communities. They are fleeing because they are afraid and they don't have options and alternatives. My hope for those families who have made the decision to flee is that, one, that they can find along the way families, a society that is not judging them just as a migrant that has decided to leave, but as someone, a human being that is suffering. And as a result of that suffering, is moving to a different place. Empathy and understanding, I think, is critical for this. And then I also hope that no matter where, they can find a future along the way. Because as I mentioned before, people nowadays are not just aspiring to stay in the US. Some of them, what they are looking for is a peaceful place where their kids can grow and that they have the opportunity to provide what the family needs. That's my wish for those families.